Yeah. Let me introduce. Today we have special guest from Turkey, professor, Dr. PhD, Doctor of Science in Media, Communication, Cinema, Professor Nezih Orхон from Turkey. And we have honor to listen to you. Thank you very much for joining to us.
Thank you. And I have a question. I will just see the black boxes instead of faces. That would be more human rather than I'm interacting to machines. So I will appreciate if I can see Timur, Camila, Oksana, Anastasia, and some other names that I wouldn't disrespect. But if you think that it's okay, you can do other things at the same time while you listen to me. But I would like to see the human side of you, not the computer side of you. But it's totally
yeah. We can show our face.
Thank you for the generosity, and I really appreciate. So I talk to human beings rather than the Zoom itself. So hi. So I'm so glad to meet you. As Ali Bek said, I'm Nezih Orhon from Turkey. I work at Anadolu University. So historically, I worked at CNN International in Washington, D.C. I worked for NBC News during the Second Iraqi War in Southeast Turkey and Northern Iraq. So during the disaster times, like natural disasters, I worked for, again, CNN International. We made documentaries we made news documentaries for BBC. So during the times of the humanitarian crisis in 2011. So here I am, but essentially I'm teaching broadcast journalism and other communication and media film related subjects. So if you are ready, I can start and I can share my presentation. So let's go to the beginning. All right. So our topic is, as you know, it's the media coverage of socially sensitive religious topics. So I would like to start with this photograph first. So as you see, I mean, when there are issues related with religion, or when there are issues related with people from different backgrounds. I mean, let's say it can be ethnically different backgrounds, religiously different background, nationally different background, but immediately on the headlines, on the storylines, on the big titles, we immediately see some kind of attachments to religion, God, or the Pope, or the Muslims, or the Christians, or this and that. Immediately we see those big highlights with spectacular wordings or pictures. So that's the attitude of media. But is it constructive? I don't know. We have to discuss. That's why we are here. So what kind of things we can pay attention to, and at the same time, what kind of things actually we can contribute to our business. So here I am. And unfortunately, you see there are examples from United States that some American football players, they have been protesting. At the same time, Pope was talking about abortion, or it was 9/11, or it was a kind of time to time they said jihadi killer. So that's the topic of today. So, well, to be honest, actually, why we have journalists? What's the purpose of the journalism? So actually, journalism is not a public service only. We are not doing things only for the, to be beneficial for the public, but rather we are kind of cultural objects. Journalists are cultural objects, cultural subjects. So it means that actually the way we practice journalism, first things first, we have to realize that journalism is a cultural act. It's a cultural thing. So that's why, as it's related with cultural things, it's full of variables. It means that there's no single way of defining things. There's no fixed definitions. But there are several principles to follow. So especially the principles I would like to remind you immediately is, I mean, compared to robots, compared to machines, compared to artificial intelligence, imagine what makes us human, and at the same time, what makes us journalists compared to those things like robots, machines, artificial intelligence, or technologies is two things. Human beings and journalists in this life, we have responsibilities. But machines, artificial intelligence, other things, they do not have responsibilities. At least up to now, they couldn't be programmed for responsibilities. And the second one is, it's the ethics. I don't know if you ever heard an artificial intelligence with ethics. No, that's not an issue. Have you ever heard of a machine, a robot with ethics, with ethical issues? No, they don't have ethics. So that's one unique thing that we have to remember as human beings, as journalists. We have to have responsibilities and ethics. So let's continue. I would like to benefit from what Francis Bacon said, the famous novelist historically. You see, it says if a human, let's say not only a man, but if a human starts with certainties, it means that if we think that we know everything, and we know everything in detailed context, at the end, we will all end up in doubts. So it means that we will fail in many aspects. And that's actually the practice of journalists today. We behave like we know everything. The way we do is the appropriate way. No. So what Francis Bacon says is, but if we will content to begin with doubts, it means that we accept that we don't know much. We have uncertainties. Maybe not every one of us knows the religion the way other people knows. Obviously, we will have different levels of knowing. So it means that it is very okay to have doubts. It is very okay to have uncertainties, because accepting the fact that we still have things to learn as journalists, as human beings, then we will reach to the certainties as journalists. So we will less commit mistakes. So I think that was a brilliant quotation from Francis Bacon. So please look at these tiles. I mean, beautiful, different tiles. I even think that that little boy or little girl, I don't want to say something wrong, that little kid will love these tiles because they're different, because they're colorful, they're different in shape. So journalists we are like these tiles. It means that we're different, and it's okay to be different. We are subjective. It means that, we take sides time to time. We are subjective human beings, and they're affected by the heredity factors and the environmental factors. So it means that we live in a very diverse world, and we are part of it. So actually, journalists with differences, it is very okay, and we are the true representatives of the pluralism. Actually, we are, as the journalists, representatives of the diversity. But while we have these qualities, please keep it in mind that at the same time, having these differences, having these diversities, representing these pluralisms, but at the same time, it means that we have responsibility to respect different dimensions of pluralism. We have to respect diversity and inclusion, including everyone in our daily life practices as journalists. So simply, people are the audiences. We are not only responsible for only one category of the audiences. We are responsible for diverse audiences. And at the same time, those audiences, they have an expectation for us. They have an expectation for you. They want their stories. They want their issues of diversity, issues of their values, different values. Look at these beautiful dresses. Their issues of traditions. They want media to reflect them, but at the same time, they want media to respect them. Not only reflect them, but also to respect them. So reflection and respecting, they work at the same time. So these are the key points we have to keep it in mind. Hi. Welcome, dear friends. You're okay. You look very good. Perfect. So it means that as journalists, we have to be aware of the issue, the concept of cultural diversity, because religion is part of it. What do we mean? It means that as we are diverse individuals, every one of us, trust me, every one of us, we have manifestations because of our diversity issues, because we are diverse. Our priorities are different. Our choices are different in life. So a couple of obvious manifestations in our lives as cultural objects, as human beings we are. For example, religion plays a key role in our daily life manifestations. Our ethnic background plays a key role in our daily life interactions. It means that in our daily life manifestations, the way we sound in life. Or our race plays a key role in our daily life manifestations. Our national origin, the language we use, our mother language, they create manifestations in life. Our gender, they are the obvious and primary manifestations in life that they are part of our sound in life. So that's why we have to be aware of those manifestations. So it means we at the very beginning, we as the journalists, we are the culturally oriented subjects. We are the cultural objects. So it means that we are made of not only bones and meat, but as journalists, we are also made of values, attitudes, behaviors, and symbols. Not only the audiences, but ourselves too. And we transmit them through our jobs. So what it means is, please be careful on this one. Through our practices, by having values, attitudes, behaviors, symbols, and more, we kind of create and provide a cognitive map and a kind of an interpretation of realities for public from our perspective. So it means that we kind of contribute to the way of living of the individuals in the society. We contribute to their thinking patterns. We contribute to their decision styles, their communication styles, or to their actions in daily life, in the groups. So those are the ones, actually, they make us, again, responsible and ethical individuals as behalf of our jobs. But those are not machines. We are the human beings as journalists. So it means that as journalists, especially in so-called sensitive issues, in diverse groups with different expectations, first things first, every individual society, they live and they exist with rights, basic human rights. It can be about protection. It can be about accommodation. It can be about feeding. It can be about getting a job, basic rights. So it means that as journalists, we have to realize that when we are writing our stories, we have to remember for every single individual, not for some, not for many, but for everyone, we have to realize the rights-based approaches. It means that we have to serve the interest of the rights for everyone, not for some. Number two, it means that we have to also realize not only the rights of individuals, but some people, some small groups within the population, some ethnic groups, some religious groups, some this, some that, you name it. each group may have special needs, and it's normal. Those needs may be about representation in life. Those needs may be about voice. Those needs may be about having, equal opportunities. So it means that, for example, women in life, they may not be getting the same rights like the men do. So it means that some groups, some people, some individuals, they may have extra needs to be answered, to be reflected. So it means that as journalists, especially in relation to diverse audiences, we have to realize the fact that we have to create needs-based approaches besides the rights-based approaches. And obviously, different groups, different religion-oriented groups, ethnic groups, you name it. As I said, I don't want to limit them with one group or two categories. You name it. They may have different value propositions in their lives. We may not know. I may not know your value propositions. You may not know my value propositions. What I value may not be in your radar. What you value in your life may not be in my radar. So it means that we have to be extra careful, extra sensitive to the value-based issues. So it means that having the rights-based approaches, having the needs-based approaches, but at the same time, we have to also consider the value-based approaches as journalists. When we are writing something, when we are producing programs, when we are doing news shows or news materials, whatever, ask ourselves, am I considering the rights-based approaches? Am I considering needs? Am I considering reflecting, answering the values of the individuals? Not from only one corner, but from different dimensions. And obviously, we have to follow certain principles in relation to the society we exist in. It means that if we can contain some principles, I'm not on purposely using the word rules. I will explain it to you. Why it's not rules, but principles. It means that through those principles, we can manage our boat in stormy weathers. We can manage our boat in sensitive situations. It means that, yes, it is very normal. It is very okay to recognize that all of us, including myself, including yourself, including Ali Bek, we all have biases in life. That's okay. But we have to realize them. We have to recognize them. We have to realize our perceptions, our biases. And the second one is coming from those biases and recognizing those, perceptions that we have. So it means that we may be sticking to them, but we should not escalate the tensions. We should not escalate the threats or not to be provocative in our moves when we meet with other perceptions, when we meet with other biases, because we all accept that everyone has bias in life. And it's okay, as long as we manage them. And I will come to them, how we do it. And please kill the positions. I mean, I can talk about Turkey, if Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, two football teams, they're fighting against each other, it's always about the position. We are not looking for scoring. We are not looking for defending positions. So if you defend the position, then everything turns into us and them. No, we don't want to create others. We have enough others in our lives. We are tired of them. We should kill that us versus them formulation. That mentality should be got rid of it. And to understand the issues, everything is related to the context. So it means that, please, all together, when there is a sensitive issue, try to understand beneath the surface of the identify the deeper issues. Because most of the times, the things we see, they are the surface. But what are the motivating factors for those crises, for those conflicts, for those sensitive issues? So what are the motivations behind them? What are the unanswered needs that causes those sensitivities? Let's look beneath those issues, deeper factors, and separate, that's a very important thing, separate the sacred from the pseudo-sacred issues. It means that, please, separate the facts compared to the value propositions, compared to the position defendings. Facts are different from those other factors. So that's how we can manage our boat. So time to time, on a constant base, it will be beneficial and it will be super, super helpful to ask these reference questions in sensitive issues in relation to religions. What happened? Why did it happen? What could be the motivation behind it? Or if it's happening right now and it's continuing, why it's happening, why it's still happening, and what's the reason for escalation? Who is contributing more and for what purpose? And what might be happening from our perspective as journalists? What are my possibilities to construct in the process, not for the final destination? We as journalists are responsible for the processes, not for the destinations. We have to be the constructive sides. And to understand the intensity, what could be the damage, to reflect to society that what might likely happen if this crisis, if this sensitivities continue. These are the questions we should keep it in mind almost on constant base when there's a sensitivity issue. And as journalists, again, in this culturally diverse world, as I said, I would tell you, we have no rules. I'm sorry, we have no rules, but we have principles. Why? Rules are very linear and they are very strict. They do not leave any space to the journalist. They do not leave any space to game playing for individuals. Most of the people think that if they follow the rules, everything will be fine. Well, our lives are full of rules. And where is the happiness? There is no perfect happiness. But rather, I prefer to use the concept principles compared to rules. Why? Because principles are organic and they're wider. It means that true principles, which are organic and wider, can contain many things. They carry elasticity. It means that they leave freedom for cooperation, especially when there is sensitivity. It means that there's a need for cooperation. It means that we need a freedom for cooperation. But rules, most of the time, rules do not leave space for cooperation. Rules do not leave space for freedom, but principles do. So benefiting from the principles, cooperation needs freedom and creativity. That's how we should think of our journalistic practices. So once again, as journalists in sensitive times related to the issues like religion, our job is not to create competitions. Our job is not to defend positions, once again, between groups, between populations, but rather create cooperation. So it means that journalists should act like a bridge, not like a football stadium defending the positions. So I will benefit from, as a great psychologist, Carl Gustav Jung. He says that, imagine, as we consider our job as a bridge, it means that we connect different populations. We connect representatives, individuals of religions. It means that meeting of personalities, at least two personalities, is like the content of two chemical substances. And it means at the end, if there's a reaction, it means that if there's an interaction in between those sides, at the end, both of them, all of them will be transformed. So it means that all will take something out of it. Not only one side, not few, but all sides will take something. So we want a kind of a chemical interaction between sides. That's our role as journalists. So, as journalists, we consider them as cultural subjects working in culturally diverse environments. Keep it in mind, we have a responsibility to ask a question to ourselves, especially in those sensitive moments, in those special moments. Please ask yourself, what's my role? Who I am as a journalist, but where am I at this point? But our journey as a journalist is not finished and done yet there. But at the same time, we have to use the following question. Where could I be? Because you may be at a certain point right now, but through your personal, through your strategic, through your professional development, you want to be in a certain level. And that's most of the times it's about how you manage those sensitive moments. So there are possibilities about your position. You may be, and I hope none of us in this group right now are in the left three positions. Well, you may be culturally destructiveness point. You may be in that level. And I hope none of us. Or you can be in the cultural incapacity level. I hope, again, none of us. Or you may be culturally blind. And I hope none of us again. But rather, I believe, people in this group are on the right-hand side of the three levels. Let's say maybe few of us, we are positioned in the cultural pre-competence, or maybe some of us, we are in the level of cultural competence, not even pre-competence, but in the competence. Or maybe that would be brilliant. Maybe we are culturally proficient. It means that we are in the level of cultural proficiency. So what do we understand from these? Let's be more concrete. So imagine through your practices as a journalist, if you think that, you're only serving, you're doing your journalistic practices only for the rights and the privileges for the dominant groups only. You're just serving the needs of the dominant groups. Then I am very sorry to say that you have to find your place in the cultural destructiveness level. You're a culturally destructive journalist then. If you're only serving your job only for the dominant groups. Let's name it and let's face it. But let's say a little better than that. On the continuum, you get higher. If you still maintain certain stereotypes for some groups in the society, in Kazakhstan, in Turkey, in some place, and if you're doing some unfair hiring practices, or you're just doing things according to your stereotypes, according to the perception you have, it means that I am very sorry again, as a journalist, you're culturally incapable. You're in the culturally incapacity level. And I believe none of us at those levels, being here, sharing these things. Or let's say you have a beautiful excuse, and I think it's one of the brilliant lies in our lives. You're lying simply by using it. Oh, we are sorry. We treat everyone the same in this society. From our journalism, from our newspaper, from our television station, we treat everyone the same. So actually, by saying it, you only meet the needs of the dominant groups. So actually, you're only serving for the dominant groups. So simply, you're culturally blind. I am very sorry to say that. Well, let's kill those negative trees. Let's talk about the positive trees. Let's say, if you're exploring, if you're willing to discuss about, differences in cultural life, cultural diversity, those are, as you remember, cultural diversity manifestations, religion. You're okay to talk about different religions. Your eyes are open to them. and you see the needs of different groups, different religious groups, different ethnic groups, different genders. So it means that, lovely, you are in the culturally pre-competence level. Beautiful. Bingo. Or let's say that level is not enough to you, but you also recognize those individual and cultural differences between groups, those religious groups. Seek advice from them. You know, ask them what I could do best for you in my journalism. What do you want me to reflect behalf of you? What do you think that what if I do that creates respect for you? Wow. Then we talk about cultural competence. It means that you're doing simply things not because of the dominant groups, but simply you see them, but also you ask for their advices. You cooperate with them. You don't compete with them. You cooperate with them. You interact with them. But even at the same time, if you're doing projects like this together, you're open to different services. You are willing to answer cultural needs about, you know, ethnicity, race, gender, and religion, those main manifestations. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Please then consider yourself as a journalist who carries the cultural proficiency. Beautiful. So it means that those cultural competencies, they start with awareness. So we have to open our eyes. There is no single religion in this world. There is no single one-faced person in this life. There are no only men in this life. Be aware that, you know, there are different diverse groups, and it grows with the knowledge. And we actually enhance them with different skills. And we polish it, we shape it, and we construct it with those cross-cultural interactions. It means that we have to interact with those groups, not only live in a single community. Then be more specific, coming from those general ideas. Please listen. You got to do is because you want to talk about what drives people, how they benefit from religion, how do they see in their religion. Those are the things, you know, those are the things driving people. We do not focus on the religious elements in many stories because, as Rob Wallace says, because we do not know how we can report them. And we do not most of the time we do not know many things about what are the concepts in faith. Or, you know, most of the journalists, they're afraid to touch issues related with religion because most of them, they don't understand the concepts. That's very simple. And they are not exposed to those different religious groups. So, you know, asking about a person's religion, you know, it's a very personal thing, but interacting with them is not a personal thing. It's a social thing. So, I mean, if you're not able to ask their weight, their height, their personal things, don't simply approach them as if you're asking their religion. No, dance with them. That's how we take the steps. Take a step, give a step. Take a step, give a step. So some guiding simple questions could be, let me ask this question. Let me stop this. And I would be very happy if I can see your faces for 1 minute.
Уважаемые слушатели, если вас не затруднит, включите камеры, чтобы наш гость Турции,
I mean, it will take only 1 minute.
чтобы он увидел вас.
It will be all yours. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. And let me check if everything's okay up to now, while I see your faces.
Yes.
Everything is under control?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saule. So my question is, for example, how many of you have been to a church? Raise your hands. Well, one or two. We have as far as I see, we have 14 people, only 2 people have been to church. How many of you have you been to a synagogue? None, only one, Ali Bek. I mean, can you imagine? We have 5, 10, out of me, we have 14 people, only 1 person been to synagogue. Or how many have you have been to mosque? Okay, some. Okay. Or let's say those people, how many of you have raised for mosque, for synagogue, for church? Those people who raised their hands. Within the last year, within the last 1 year, how many times you have been to church? None of you, huh? Well, I'm sorry, things have been changed quite a lot since then. How many of you have been to a synagogue? Okay, we had, I think, 1 or none. Oh, we didn't have any person. How many of you've been to a mosque within the last 6 months? Many things have changed. 6 months is a long time. So I'm not even asking you if you have been to mosque, church, or synagogue. I even ask you the timeline. I mean, look, within the last 6 months, all our lives got changed because we have COVID. So it means that things really change in 6 months. So it's not enough that 20 years ago you visited a church, or you visited the mosque, or you visited the synagogue. But even within the last 6 months or 1 year, many things have changed. So if some of you have visited those places, whom you have talked to? Did you talk to the priest? Did you talk to the hoja? Did you talk to the prayer? Who did you talk to? Or did you talk to the religious community? Or did you just walk around that religious site? I mean, without doing those things, without seeing, without visiting, without interacting with the sites, without talking to the communities, without talking to the characters involved, we immediately write, huh? It's beautiful. We know everything. Perfect. I love it. I do it. I know everything. I'm a super character. Let me start with that first. So imagine, where are the faces? Where are the voices? Where are the stories of those individuals? So when we're talking about reflecting and respecting diverse groups, culturally diverse groups, which includes, ethnicities, nationalities, genders, and especially religion and religions, it means that to be representative, behalf of them, we have to have faces, we have to have voices, we have to have the stories. It's easy to write from my home. So it means that this is a very important point. Most of the time, as communication, media, journalism people, we talk about media literacy. We talk about news literacy. We talk about information literacy. We talk about, with these current technological development, we talk about technological literacies. But my question is, if we are paying attention to sensitive issues related to religion, and it takes quite a lot of times in our countries, because we are living in diverse populations, it means that I think we have to realize that religion literacy is part of our job too. But no one thinks of it. We only think that media literacy is crucial, information literacy is crucial, technology literacy is crucial. Well, I'm sorry, in the culture we live in, we exist in, as far as the communities define their identities, and one aspect is religion, then we should be all religion literate too. Not only for one religion, but for all religions possibly. Have you ever thought of it? We should. So back to you again. If you want to turn off your cameras, it's okay. But I love to see your faces. I like to see your nonverbal cues that, time to time we mingle with our heads and faces like, yeah, I got you, Nezi. maybe you're saying, okay, but it's not happening. No, it's okay. It's beautiful to see your cues. So it means that when we do our journalistic practices, let me share this screen with you so it will be more fair. Hold on a second. Okay. So to be on the right line, do we think issues related with religion, constructed or the way reflected? It means that, is it the way we put religion in the center of our stories? We use it as a politicized religion, the way we choose language, the way we use adjectives, the way we choose photos, or the way we relate ourselves to religion, rather than being political and considering religion as a political issue. No, maybe we construct and reflect religion from the humanized, human perspective. If we have faces, stories, voices, then it becomes more human. So, unfortunately, please do analyze any story, any news story related with religion. We have to see the difference between covering religion and covering politics and government. They are two different things. But unfortunately, most of the time, when people write about religion or sensitive issues related with religion, actually they're trying to do some political work. But it's not about politics. So it means that we have a responsibility. We may have stereotypings, but it means that we have to separate religion from the politics. That's why we have to make things not abstract, but actually we create stories with human side of the things. So in your stories or the stories you observe around us, who speaks behalf of religion? Who are involved in stories in relation to religion? Who are those individuals? Can we see their voices in those stories? Issues related with religion. Can we see religious minorities? Can we see experts? Can we see commentators? Can we see religious leaders as behalf of those religious issues? Or is it only coming from the journalists themselves? Who speaks behalf of religion? Or is it we claim that we are writing something related with religion and things are very sensitive, but imagine every time politicians are the ones are speaking and commenting, then we are doing something else. We are not doing something sincere about religion, but we are politicizing the issue. So for what reason the story is there when we look at it? Is the story related to religion, about any sensitive aspect of the religion? Is it for politicizing it? Is it for speculating it? Is it for sensationalization of the purpose? Is it taking a position, taking a side, or ignoring certain perspectives or certain groups, or making it even more controversial? Or maybe not any of these negative approaches, but to be honest, to be sincere, to be ethical, maybe you're just in the essence of the subject matter that you want to reflect different points, different opinions, different perspectives, and different stories of individuals. Yes, we have to accept that media's coverage, unfortunately, media's coverage of religion is way too sensationalized. That's the most of the time purpose of media in relation to religion-related issues, and especially when there are sensitivities. Very limited number of journalists, and actually I ask you the question, and we may say yes, very limited number of journalists are very knowledgeable about religion. So it means that we need religion literacy. I'm not saying that you have to be religious. That's a totally different thing. Religion literate. And there's a divide between what people want, what the audiences, what the culturally diverse groups want, and emphasis on the spirituality, experiences, and the beliefs, but on the other side, what the media actually reports. So we are not actually answering the expectations, needs, values of the audiences. We are every time trying to do a political job, benefiting using the religion, sensitivities in relation to religion. So when religion or religions are reported, as I said, because of the political reasons, it's often the wrong reasons are used. So please ask yourself this question. Are you a Christian reporter? Are you a Muslim journalist? Are you a Jewish media person? They do not exist. I mean, in our business, we do not use those nouns. No, we are just journalists. We have a responsibility to reflect as much as possible all sides. So in that sense, it means that we may be biased, but we have to try as much as possible sides views. So it means that we have to be a supply sider. So it means that then we will be serving for the better interest, best interest of the public. To remember, if you're looking for a problem, necessarily in sensitivities related with religion, issues, in sensitive moments, the problem is not the religion, not any religion. The problem is not Turks. The problem is not Kazakhs. The problem is not Russians or Americans. It's not the men I see here. It's not the woman I see here. It's not the journalists. It's not the problem. It's not the people. But what makes things sensitive is the viewpoints, the perceptions we create, the biases we carry on in our work, the prejudices and stereotypes we build in our work, the cultural lenses, our eyes, our glasses are not machines or are not biological things. But at the same time, we have cultural lenses. It should serve for all aspects of the society, and it means all aspects of the religions. Are we carrying intolerance? It means that are we directly or indirectly building hate, discrimination, intolerance in our work? Those are the problems. Those are the ones create sensitivities. Otherwise, being a Kazakh is not a sensitive issue. Being a Turk is not a sensitive issue. Being a journalist is not a sensitive issue. Having a religion is not a sensitive issue. But the way we craft them make things sensitive. So, can I ask you turn on your cameras one more time, please? Because this is a small game. We will play for 2 minutes only. We will play a game. Please bring yourself paper and pen. Small paper and pen.
Уважаемые слушатели, просят включить камеры и принести с собой ручку и листочек. На 2 минуты игра.
2 minutes only.
Включить просят ваши камеры.
Perfect.
Либек, будет хорошо, если мы сразу будем переводить вопросы. И
Not an exam at all.
Окей.
Not an exam. It's a game.
Это не экзамен, это игра.
Shukran. Okay, so please write down on your paper. It can be words, it can be sentences. Please describe the things that makes you. Those are the things. What kind of things describe you? Please write the words. What are your values? Please write them down. And how you feel about religion? I mean, little or more. How religion feeds you? Little, better, small, this and that. And what is the religion meaning to you? I'm not asking you to write negative things, but what kind of contributions you build in relation to religion, culture, diversities. And even, please write down, if you try to make religions speak to each other, what kind of good words they would write to each other? What you wish them to write to each other? Please write them down. And even, you know, by small drawing, you can, as men, you can draw your superhero picture, or as a woman, you can draw your superheroine pose. Be funny. Enjoy what you do. Then I will tell you what to do.
Попросили написать несколько слов, как вы себя характеризуете, ваши качества, если я верно
I'm
понимаю.
not asking for perfect answers. Any answer is a perfect answer.
Да, ну, не обязательно нужны там безупречные ответы, и ваше понимание, вот, отношение к религии, к вопросам религии. Если я в чем-то ошибаюсь, нас могут поправить, да, Мадина?
Thank you so much, Alibek.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for joining to us.
Thank you, thank you. So I will repeat the points. I mean, please write those things that they describe you. What kind of things that they may describe you? What are your values in life? What kind of values you get from religion? It can be even words. What is the meaning, positive meanings of religion? We are trying to be constructive here. And even if you're the referee, if you're the boss, making two religions or three religions are speaking to each other, what kind of words you want them to use for each other? The positive words, positive adjectives. And even draw your superheroine pose. So maybe if you want to read a couple of words from your papers, I would love to hear them. Only 2-3 words. Any part of it. Please go ahead.
Прочитать 2-3 слова из вашего списка, спрашивает Незих Орхон. Кто хотел начать?
Who's going to be the leader?
Кто хотел быть лидером?
Energize the group.
Да, двигателем,
So, for
энергичным.
example, I cannot read the name, but I see I'm sociable, purposeful, and my attitude to religion is positive. Perfect. That's simple. Any other person? That's okay if your camera is not functioning. Saule, would you like to share with us?
Well, in the case of religion, I think I feel some respect, first of all, because I think it requires a lot of maybe self-development and self-discipline, yes, to be religious people. But when we just when I communicate with religious people, I feel they calm, that they are calm, and I think it's also beneficial for any organization because calm people can just manage, yes, different people. But at some little point, I'm a bit maybe scared because maybe I don't know what is religion, what are their concrete attitudes, so it's just a little bit scared. So,
Saule, thank you so much. That was great. Timur, would you like to share with us? We cannot hear you.
Тимур, мы не слышим вас. Тимур.
That's fine. Super.
Тимур.
Sound check.
Sound check is fine.
Good. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I just found my codec to my web camera. Okay. I want to say just 3 words to all, and that's all. First of all, it's love. Second one is happiness. And third one is stability. That's
Perfect.
all.
Thank you so much, Timur. So
You're welcome.
I'm not going to ask any other person. It's just a representative game. So can you just scratch your paper, please, into 2 pieces?
Разорванные листочки ваши просят на 2 частях.
Just into 2 pieces, break them into 2 pieces, please. Thank you. So put them together and break them into 4 pieces now.
Взять вместе и опять разорвать на 2 получается.
Beautiful. Scratch them. Perfect. Put them together again and scratch them to 8 pieces now.
Сделать еще раз. И разорвать.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And if you can, put them together again. Scratch them to 32, if you can.
Если у вас получится еще раз сделать, разорвать.
Timur had a very great example for us. He just sawed them to the ground. You see, first things first. I am very sorry that I made this game out of your values, of your personal attachments to life, to your values, to your relation to religion and other things. But this is how it is. Most of the times, as Saule said, things are very abstract. We are not clear how we can talk about them. You see, when we are not representing different sides of religion, and if we don't know it, it becomes more sensitive. And you guess what happens? People simply scratch their representation, their reflections. So that's why the more we reflect the views, the more we interact with them. And coming from what Timur said, definitely all those points, then we will not torn our papers. But it was not nice, huh? The game was not nice.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's about your life, your values, your attachments to life, your attachment to religion, little or more. This is how it happens. I'm sorry. The way ignorance we create in our journalistic practices, we turn them apart. This is exactly what's happening. So let's continue. Then what is the solution? I mean, I don't want to talk too much about this and that, positive and negative only. So I will share with you my presentation again. So it means that true literacies, not only in our job, true literacies about religion, true reflecting and respecting different faces, voices, and stories. More and more we will be constructive, so things will not be torn apart. So to be on the right line, I think someone's audio is echoing. Maybe we can mute. Okay, perfect. So, for example, are we aware of the words we use? Are we aware of the adjectives we choose? Are we aware of the photographs we choose in our stories related with religion? Are we again humanizing the stories in respect to religion, or are we simply politicizing the stories? The way we choose words, the way we choose photographs, the way we choose adjectives. So it means that there is a difference between covering religion and covering politics and government. When we talk about conflict, we are frequently talking about politics, not religion. We're just benefiting from religion. So it means that that's why we need to put the faces, the stories of individuals. I was just talking to them. Yeah. So please, if your Google on your mobile phone or on your desktop computer is functioning, please write people. Just in Kazakh, write people. And search visually. What kind of people will appear in your Google search, in the visual search, in the pictures? I mean, think of those first 20 pictures. Who are they representing? Which religions are represented? What groups, what ethnicities, what countries are represented? When you look those 20 first search results. Or please, in your Google, search in the pictures, search visually, and write down religion. See what comes out when you write religion. Ali Bek shared his, Ali Bek shared a document. Okay, I think that's another thing. Okay. So please pay attention on that. Or when you write Jews, I mean, please write down Jews on your Google search. What kind of pictures it will retrieve to you? For example, when you write Christians, when you write Muslims, please write down Muslims. Please write down a word, only a word Muslim. Let's see what kind of pictures it will bring. Your first 20 answers. What kind of pictures you have? Do they represent you? Do they represent your society?
People, praying people, Muslims.
Muslims.
Yeah, praying people.
So is being a Muslim only about praying?
No.
No. There is a social life, there's an economic life, there's a political life, there is cultural life. So Muslims are defined only as praying people. Look for Christians. Write down Christian in your visual Google search. Let's see what it will bring as your first 20 pictures. Again, praying people.
No. Yeah, guys.
Is it different?
Yeah, we see cross.
So when it comes to Christians, Google gives us more symbolic answers.
Yeah.
How about Jews? Write down Jew. What kind of pictures you have?
Jews are everywhere. They are praying in a political life. They are everywhere.
So they are represented in different dimensions, not only single way, only praying, not only as cross, but in different as levels of life, different categories of life. Then we should ask why. I mean, machines are not producing them. People like you, people like me, journalists like you and like me, they contribute those content. People put those pictures. And another thing, when you look for the stories, not only visual search, I mean, if you do the regular search with those words like Christian, Muslim, and Jew, which adjectives are mostly used? I'm not asking you to use this question now, but another time when you have free time, write down on a regular search on Google, put Christian, put Muslim, put Jewish, then see what kind of adjectives, good, bad, bigger, smaller, better, worse, this, that, this way, that way. What kind of adjectives are used and why they're used that way? Those uses make things sensitive. Otherwise, religion of Jew, I mean, religion of, Jewish people, religion of Christian people, religion of Muslims, people themselves, they're not sensitive. but the way we create users, they make things complicated and sensitive. And the most important thing is, in the past, they used to take place in the mass media, but more importantly, today, more and more, they take place, those one-dimensional users, those stereotype users, take place in the personalized media, in the social media, on YouTube videos. So that's why those are the things make things sensitive. So it's okay. It's okay if we do not know about the religion. It's very okay. I don't know. But if we don't know it, it will be very hard to write about it. So we have to accept the fact. If we do not know about the religion, we cannot write about the religion, or we cannot easily relate. But journalists, we immediately write. We don't accept the fact that we don't know it, or we don't know some aspects of it. If we don't know it, we cannot make the necessary connections, relationships between issues. So that's why we have to relate religion in relation to the central point of the issues, how it affects, what kind of values they become more visible, those kind of things. So I'm coming to the end in my last 3 slides. If we want to share some sincere tips, I will read them loud for you. Listening and asking open questions is sometimes not only the answer. They're not enough. They're not enough. It's not enough to only listen and asking open questions. But religion at its heart is about people, not just ideas to which people ascribe. So understanding the whole of someone's life is helpful to cover. So it means that, please, go touch the real people. How religion plays in the core essence of their own lives. How do they see religion in their own lives? Try to spend then more time with them, talking with them. Do not spend time behalf of them. Spend time with them. Ask those questions. Forget reading social media comments. They are, excuse my Turkish, they are bullshit. Social media is a garbage. It's the place for hate. I mean, in one day, Timur can hate me, I can hate from Timur just because of the social media. It's a garbage place. Which we are not going to do that. It was just an example. Because I noticed that Timur is a tough guy. Okay. But it means that we have to be more specific. When we talk about Muslims, when we talk about Christians, are we talking about all Muslims, all Christians, or are we talking about those 3 individuals? I'm not even attaching Muslim, Christian. Are we talking about those 3 individuals? Rather than calling all Muslims or all Christians. Do not generalize. Do not assume. It means that we have to be extra careful considering do not harm individuals, do not harm cultures. Because it's most of the time it's about a couple of people, not about the culture, not about the religion. So it means that knowledge and perception are personal, even for journalists. So if something is really related with religion, put religion in this heart of the things. Do not just benefit from religion just to politicize, speculate things. So it means that we have to be smart, extra smart. Why? Otherwise, we will be duped by the negative purposes. It means that we have to understand the context, the complexity, and the nuances. Those are the 3 things we should be extra careful when there are moments of sensitivities related to religion. And bottom line, show all times the respect. Without this, we should not start. So please ask ourselves this question. Actually, there are great opportunities when we deal with religion in our news stories. These are the opportunities. Have we ever thought how religion can contribute to democracies? Or are we just only considering religion threat to democracies? Why not? Religion can contribute to democracies, little or more. Or how religions, I'm not talking about one religion, different religions, different perspectives of different religions, how religions can contribute to human rights, pluralism, to cooperation between cultures, local development, how religions can contribute to local development, even how you can really benefit from religion in climate change. Maybe to the religious communities, you will create specific messages that they will make sense for those communities in terms of tackling with climate crisis, climate change, in the issues of gender equality, sustainable development, how you can really benefit from religion, its messages, those messages from different religions in times of conflict resolution, crisis and pandemic, even in the COVID-19 process, why religion cannot play a role. And I'm sure little or more, in some aspects, religion can bring messages. So keep it in mind, coming from these points, that's why we should consider our work as journalism, as journalists, not only journalism as public service, but journalism today is an advocacy work, advocating issues. Today's journalists are advocates for human rights, for democracy, for sustainable development. And we should be the bridge integrating them to religion. We should not be afraid of it. That's why it would be good to learn, to be literate about the religion. And I think my last slide summarizes everything. There are some things that religion and journalism, they are the same. They do the same thing. They are running after the same things. It means that they both pay attention to the weak people, to the needy people, religion and journalism. It means that, very importantly, both religion and journalism can and do speak truth to the power, to the authorities. They can raise the voice of realities to the power, to the authorities, both journalists and the religious leaders and the religion themselves. So it means that both religion and journalists, they can be time to time safeguarding the liberties because they are loyal to the citizens. They're about citizens, both religion and both journalism. So it means that they can be independent sources for monitoring the power. Those who are holding the power, religion and journalists, they can both serve as monitoring tools. So it means that they analyze the situations, they analyze the exaggerations, they analyze the lies. They are the monitors. So it means that, I think my bottom line is, I'm not considering sensitive, actually benefiting from the realities of religion, realities of journalism. Both of them consider the problem of the evil in the society. What produces evilish jobs in the society? Who is corrupting in the society? They are running after it. They're for the good. So it is because we are different. It's beautiful. It makes us special. I'm so glad that Timur is different than me. I'm different from Timur, or I'm different from, Ali Bek, or I'm different from other characters. It can happen in the religion. Things about people, things about Kazakhs, things about Turks, things about Americans, Russians, Chinese. Those are not the sensitive issues, but our perceptions, our biases, our stereotypes, our prejudices make things sensitive and fragile. And I send my respects to you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nezih Orхон. Thank you. Thank you for your lecture.
And I'm very open to your comments, rejections, additions, anything you would like to contribute. Thank you.
Здравствуйте. Можно, да, уже начать переводить?
Да. Just translated. Незих
In
Орхон.
short. Ага.
Мгм.
Я коротко расскажу, о чем была основная суть презентации господина Незиха Орхана. Значит, вначале я представлю Незих Орхон. Он работал некоторое время в CNN в Вашингтоне, Дистрикт Колумбия для CNN, снимал документальные фильмы о катастрофах для BBC, также он преподает тележурналистику и другие предметы, связанные с медиаграмотностью. И его презентация была на тему освещения медиа-новостей, связанных с религией. Значит, о чем была его презентация? В своей презентации он говорил, что мы живем в мире этнически разнообразном, и в мире существует множество религий. На что мы должны обращать внимание при освещении новостей, связанных с религией? Журналист – это культурный объект, и поэтому он должен учитывать два аспекта. Это ответственность, и второе – это этика. Чем журналист отличается от другой профессии? То есть он должен следовать двум основным принципам. Так как он не является роботом, а состоит из плоти, поэтому он должен следовать таким принципам, как ответственность и этика, соблюдение этических прав. Так, также господин Незих говорил о том, что у журналиста это хорошо иметь сомнения по поводу каких-то новостей, потому что так он более глубоко, более детально начнет исследовать данную проблему, и в результате чего новость будет объективной. То есть сомнения для журналиста – это нормальное явление. Также он говорил, то, что журналисты, они как разноцветные плитки, и каждый журналист, он отличается от другого. Все журналисты разные, но в одном мы должны сходиться. Это то, что мы должны осознавать культурное разнообразие вокруг нас и в то же время иметь в виду, что мы должны уважать при этом это культурное разнообразие. Так как люди, они бывают, они разные, то есть аудитория, которая слушает журналиста, она разная, из разных этнических групп, разных национальностей, разных конфессий. И поэтому, соответственно, журналист должен уметь отражать это разными способами, учитывая данные отличия. Религию, расу, национальность, язык и пол данной этнической группы. Значит, журналист является также проводником культурных ценностей, поведения. Он вносит вклад в мировоззрение людей, каким-то образом формирует его. И он ответственен за то, что он предоставляет для общественности. И существует два основных подхода к такой аудитории, культурно разнообразной аудитории. Это при написании какой-то статьи или сюжета нужно учитывать обязательно темы, связанные с религией, нужно учитывать следующие подходы. Это подход, основанный на знании прав, потребностей и ценностей данной группы, для которой эта новость предоставляется. Также нужно относиться с уважением ко всем мнениям, которые существуют. Так, у каждого есть свое мнение. Это, например, вот господин Незих привел в пример две футбольные команды. Нельзя принимать в футбольной команде, когда смотришь матч, чью-то сторону, а нужно просто смотреть реально и констатировать факты. И когда вы освещаете какую-то тему, связанную с религией, нужно смотреть более глубоко, детально. Почему это так произошло? Что вызвало данный конфликт? И дальше нужно задать себе три основных вопроса относительно, когда разбираете тему относительно религии, когда вы раскрываете. почему это случилось, почему это до сих пор происходит, что может случиться и что случится в результате. Вот. Также у журналиста не должно быть правил, но должны быть принципы. Значит, принцип – это более органичный, широкий по своему смыслу и более гибкий термин по сравнению с правилами. Принцип предполагает свободу для кооперации. У правила не оставляют места для свободы и кооперации. Поэтому господин Незих использует больше, ему нравится этот термин, принцип. И он говорит, что профессия журналиста не создает соревнования, она должна создавать кооперацию. Каждая встреча двух личностей должна приносить какой-то результат. Каждый должен вынести что-то из этой встречи. Должна произойти какая-то химическая реакция. И журналист должен задать себе 3 вопроса при освещении религиозной темы. Кто я, где я мог бы быть? В следующем слайде он показывает уровни компетенций, которые журналист осваивает и в конечном итоге достигает культурной компетенции. Первый уровень – это культурная деструктивность. Это когда журналист видит только доминантные группы и рассматривает только нужды этих доминантных групп. Следующее – это культурная неспособность, когда журналист имеет некоторые элементы, придерживается стереотипов, есть элементы расизма. Следующее – это культурная слепота, это когда он относится ко всем одинаково, и это означает, приводит к выводу, что он только рассматривает потребности доминантных групп. Следующее – это предварительная компетенция, он видит нужды разных культурных групп. И последний уровень – это культурная компетенция, в которой журналист осознает культурные различия и сотрудничает с различными вот этими культурными группами. И в конце он способен закрыть культурные потребности данной группы. Дальше следующее – это, значит, с чего должен начать журналист, чтобы стать культурно компетентным? То есть это начать с осознанности, быть более специфичным, то есть полагаться только на факты, не на концепты, не на понятия. Он должен быть чувствительным к религиозной грамотности. И религиозная грамотность – это часть работы журналиста. Значит, религиозная грамотность, она является составной частью медиаграмотности и тоже очень важна при освещении религиозных тем. Так, что нужно сделать, чтобы освещать религиозную тематику? Это использовать правильный стиль, правильный язык. И на сегодняшний день, когда журналисты освещают религиозные темы, они часто уходят в политику. Но это неправильно. Мы должны отличать религию от политики, религию от правительства. При рассмотрении своей статьи вы должны учитывать, кто освещает эту тему, религиозную тему. Отдельные индивиды, эксперты, религиозное меньшинство, журналисты, политики, комментаторы. То есть все должны участвовать и высказать свое мнение. Нужно иметь в виду обязательно для журналистов, что нужно быть очень искренним и этичным. На сегодняшний день раскрытие темы политики в медиа, оно очень имеет сенсационный характер. А люди хотят, чтобы акцент ставился больше на духовности, так как сейчас медиа слишком политизировано, и нету отличий политики от религии. Так, и следующее это, значит, что делает тему касательно политики чувствительной, то есть что людей задевает. Это их мнение, восприятие, предубеждение, стереотипы, нетерпимость. Проблема не в религии, проблема в том, что надо учитывать мнение людей, предубеждения, стереотипы и вот данные факторы. Так, дальше, значит, советы от господина Незаха, как писать темы для журналистов, связанные с религией. Значит, нельзя просто слушать и задавать вопросы, этого недостаточно. Нужно поддержать контакт с реальными людьми, проводить с ними больше времени. И он считает, что социальные медиа – это мусор, место, ну, как бы сказать, как считает, недостаточно хорошее место для того, чтобы брать оттуда информацию. Мы должны быть очень специфичны, мы не должны обобщать информацию и этим самым не навредить каждому индивиду или культуре в целом. Мы должны быть умными и понимать контекст. И уважение – это самое ключевое слово в его презентации. Самое главное. А также мы должны принять во внимание, может ли религиозная тематика внести вклад в демократию, в права человека, в кооперацию, плюрализм, даже изменение климата, местное развитие, равенство полов. Значит, в чем же сходство религии и журнализма? То, что религия и журнализм, у них самый главный акцент – это люди, их потребности, особенно люди, которые нуждаются в помощи. Роль журналистов и религий – говорить правду и доносить эту правду до правительства, до власти. И также журналисты имеют роль, они мониторят все, что происходит в мире, и предоставляют данную информацию людей. Значит, и в конце, значит, господин Незих сказал, что журнализм – это не общественный сервис, а журналист – это адвокат человеческих прав, и он должен быть очень грамотным в отношении религии. Спасибо.
That's all. Thank you very much. If you have a few questions, we can ask our dear guest. Уважаемые слушатели, есть ли у вас вопросы к нашему гостю из Турции? No questions, yeah? Okay. Nezih Orхон, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your lecture. We really appreciated it. So we can go on our second part. Yeah. Madina?
Jason, good evening. How are you? How are you today? Thank you, Professor Nezih. Our second speaker is Jeyson Uip from Hong Kong. I'm glad to welcome you here to our Kazakhstani online trainings. Here are Kazakh journalists and Kazakh students of journalism. And I know that you, Jeyson, have experience in providing humanitarian assistance. So you lived in Afghanistan for several years, and you were in Syria too. And our topic today is the safety of journalists in hotspots. And please share with your experience and share with your knowledge. You're welcome. And one couple of minutes, I will, on Russian, tell about you to our audience, please.
Okay.
Дорогие участники тренинга, я благодарю профессора Незиха Орхона из Турции. Прекрасный был доклад. Вот, и хочу представить вам еще одного нашего спикера. Это Джейсок Уип. Он из Гонконга. Джейсон, вообще на самом деле он банкир, работал на Манхэттене, значит, работал в Нью-Йорке, но в какой-то момент решил заняться благотворительностью, присоединился к организации международной организации «Красный Крест», и вместе с этой организацией он, собственно, оказывал гуманитарную помощь в разных странах мира. В том числе он жил в Афганистане рядом с талибами и жил в Сирии рядом с ИГИЛ, с боевиками ИГИЛ, оказывал гуманитарную помощь местному населению. Поэтому сегодня, я думаю, знания и опыт Джейсона, они пригодятся нам в части безопасности журналиста при освещении религиозных тем, религиозного экстремизма и работы в горячих точках. Вот. Вы можете прослушать доклад Джейсона сначала, а потом перевод его на русский язык. Если будут вопросы, пожалуйста. Jason, you're welcome, please.
Thank you, Medina. So, thank you, everyone. Good evening to everyone in Kazakhstan. So I just want to clarify a little bit. Tonight, my sharing is about my previous experience as a humanitarian, as a diplomat of a humanitarian organization over the last 10 years. But I'm no longer working for that organization anymore. So it's more my personal reflections and personal sharing. What does it mean working safely in the conflict zone? I know most of you are journalists, but safety arrangement for a humanitarian worker and for journalists are two different things. But I can share with you the general concept, how we, as a humanitarian living in places like Afghanistan, Gaza Strip, Syria, I came back safely without any issue. But that is what applicable to us may not be necessarily the same thing for you. So it's more my sharing. But at the end of my presentation, I will also share what I have observed after I came back to Hong Kong. As some of you may know, last year there was quite a social unrest in Hong Kong. And there were quite some journalists or even aid workers. They were badly treated by the police or even the protesters. So I kind of can share with you my reading and why that kind of thing may have happened. Hopefully it will be relevant and good to you. So I will share my presentation. Wait for a second. So everyone can see my PowerPoint presentation, right?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So as I say, it's about my personal story working in the humanitarian frontline, which is the battlefield. I spent my last 10 years in places like Gaza Strip, the Rohingyas area of Myanmar, Afghanistan, in Kandahar, probably you heard about that, and Aleppo in Syria, and also the border between Lebanon and Syria. So I explain a little bit the organization I work with, so that you understand the context and things why we would be in that kind of area. I used to be working for the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, which is in Geneva. And we are a neutral, impartial, and independent humanitarian organization. What does it mean, neutral or neutrality? That means we only take care of the humanitarian consequences of the victims. We don't talk about politics. We don't comment on those kinds of situations. But because we are neutral, that's why in my presentation, you will hear that I actually personally work with the Taliban. I was in contact with some groups related to the Islamic State because that is the authority that the international law provides to us. So I will share more when we are come to those kinds of sections. Another thing is ICRC specifically working in the situation of armed conflict. That means there's in the country where there is war. I doubt we have an office in Kazakhstan because I think Kazakhstan is quite a peaceful country. But for the offices of ICRC closest to you, it should be in Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. So that's where we have the office. And when people talk about the humanitarian aid, you're normally thinking we are distributing water, distributing food and medical supplies. That is true. That is some parts of the work that we are doing. But actually, what is more important is ICRC is the only organization working in the front line, implementing and monitoring the application of the humanitarian law, which is the law of war. That is the legal regulations that apply to any armed groups. Let's say when Kazakh army fighting in another country, there's actually international law regulating their behavior, where they can attack, how they can attack. So ICRC is the organization monitoring and implementing, observing how the law of war is implemented. And you may come to a question, what is the relationship between the International Red Cross with other national Red Crosses like the Japanese Red Cross, Chinese Red Cross, or in Kazakhstan, you may have Kazakh Red Crescent. We are not the same organization, we are just friends, we may be partners, but the ICRC is independent completely from other national humanitarian organizations. And the last two bullet points that I want to emphasize to you, we are not an NGO because we are formed completely by the international law, the law of war. We are there to implement it. You may not come across another NGO telling you they are formed, they are organized or established because there's an international law backup. And you may also ask, are you part of the United Nations? We are not. There's two international systems in the humanitarian war. In the humanitarian world. One is the UN system, which is in the system, every country will raise their hand and decide how they make the decisions. And you may have 5 countries with more powers than other countries, which is the China, US, UK, and Russia and France. They can actually overrule everyone. But how does it work for the ICRC system? We have our members countries. All the countries that they have signed the international law of armed conflicts are our members countries. But whenever we come to make the decision, we don't really need to go back to them and ask them to vote for us. So what we need to do is we have the authorizations from the IHL, which is the international law of armed conflict. And we just need to respond to it and take action. I hope it is clear to all of you. Everyone understand, right? I don't need a translation here, right? Okay, then I will just keep going. So there's 4 main kinds of activities of the ICRC, which are the protection, assistance, prevention, and cooperation. Tonight, I won't talk about anything related to assistance, prevention, or cooperation. I will focus more on protection because that is the kind of activities that most of the people may not be familiar, and that is what makes our work dangerous, and that is what kinds of security that we have to manage. So when it comes to protection activities, we are talking about putting families that they are separated by the armed conflicts together, or tracing the missing people because of armed conflict. Here I make the note, we are trying to look for the people they are missing in the armed conflicts for more than 30 years. If I ask you, do you know if there's any countries still in conflicts for more than 30 years? Can you name some of them? I'm sure you can come up one very simple one, Afghanistan, which is just next to your country, not far. But at the same time, we have many more countries in Africa that they have actually civil war, internal war for more than like 30, 40 years. And if you talk about Palestine and Israel, they have the conflict of more than 60 years. So actually, there's still a lot of people lost their whereabouts. Their family have no clue where they are, and they still need us to work on them. One of the classic story that we have been working on is the missing bodies or people during the Iran and Iraq war, which was almost 40 years ago. So now I want to focus more on protections of civilians population. What does it mean working in terms of protections of civilian population? Does it mean we, as the delegate or diplomat of the ICRC, we go to the front line, open our arm, and taking all the bullets? If I would have done it, I won't be here sharing my story with you. But make it simple, protecting the civilian population in our language, that means we are trying to discuss with all the parties in the armed conflict that those people, they are not actively participating in the war, including the journalists like you guys, should be protected by the international humanitarian law. All the militaries, armed groups, they should not target people like the journalists, humanitarian workers, or civilians. They should avoid any casualty to them. How we do that, let me share with you. So the first question I want to ask you, have you ever thought about air bombing in the war situation, whether it is legal or not in terms of international law? Probably most of you will think it is legal because from the news, you always hear probably America air bombing a country. There's another country flying rockets into another country. So flying rockets from the sky is something legal. Is that really the case? In Afghanistan, I was actually stationing in northern Kandahar, very close to a city called Ghazni. There is the area almost 90% controlled by the Taliban. And I was the only foreigner, got the permissions from the Taliban living in that area. So I was actually in the office myself with another 30 Afghans working together. So you can imagine there was no privacy and everyone was actually monitoring me. They knew where I was going. They knew what I was actually doing. But in Ghazni, life is very interesting. Every night, you will hear the drone, the no-man plane in the sky, flying around and checking the situation. But there was a very interesting scenario. Whenever the drone was deployed, you always have civilians running to my office and saying that, Mr. Yip, my daughter and son, they were killed when they were working in the field. It was very strange to me because it happened 1 week, 2 weeks, 3rd week, or whatever. So there's many cases like that. So as a humanitarian, we have the authorizations from the international law that actually we can gather evidence and present the cases in front of the military of the country concerned. So the international law provides us the authority to meet the American army and present the case to ask them, on whatever day, did you guys have the military operation that some civilian was actually hurt and killed? You may ask me, what is the purpose of doing this kind of discussion? Think about it. Today in Kazakhstan, life is quite peaceful. You still have the law in power, in effect. But in the situation of war, there's actually no really like law or order. But civilian life still need to be protected. So they need certain international organization to maintain the order, to represent them when they are facing some unfair treatment. So actually that is our role. By discussing with the, let's say, American military, our purpose is to actually ask them, if you have ever made a mistake in your military operation, can you try to find out the mistake? Is that an individual mistake or is that actually a systematic mistake that by accident you target civilian or by accident you target the journalist? So that is the kind of discussions that we are pushing. So now I want to flip the discussion to the other side. This picture was taken in Colombia with my colleagues, Abraham. I like Abraham a lot. I have a similar pictures with the Taliban, but because of political sensitivity, I cannot really share. So you can see the proximity between Abraham and the armed groups in the forest, in the jungle in Colombia. So I asked you the question whether air bombing by state military was legal or not in the humanitarian, in the international law. Now I want to ask you, is suicide attack legal or not from the international law perspective? Probably most of you will think it is illegal because this is scary and this is not right. As a neutral and impartial organizations, our discussion is always the same. What is the target? Where are you targeting? If you are targeting journalists, of course, it's illegal. If you are targeting a school, of course, it's illegal. But if you are targeting a military camp or a tanker or something really for military purpose, it's actually possible. So you may wonder how we discuss with the non-state armed groups like the Taliban for this kind of discussion. I want to share with you. When I was in Afghanistan, in Ghazni again, I have a regular contact from the Taliban group. His name is Haji. Haji basically came to my office every another day. The purpose for Haji to come over is actually to ask for the medical supplies. You may question, Jason, you providing assistance to terrorist group that is illegal, that is haram in your language probably. But I want to explain a little bit. As an impartial humanitarian organization, we provide assistance without considering the political background, the religious background of our target. As long as a person got injured, actually we have the legal responsibility to provide assistance. But the casualty in Afghanistan is just too high. So I cannot send my doctors and nurses to go to the field every day to pick up body or to address the wounds of the soldiers. So what we need to do is we provide some small little amount of medicine or dressing materials to the groups like Taliban. When they got injured, they decide, I don't want to fight anymore, but then they have to wait for my nurses and doctors to arrive. So they need some materials to address them. So that's why they come to our office to look for these kinds of materials. Then whenever they come to my office, if they just take the materials and go away, then of course my job is very easy. But of course I won't let Haji to live like that. So what I would do is, normally for this kinds of situation, whenever Haji show up in my office, I would ask Haji, do you remember the suicide attack 3 weeks ago in Afghanistan, whatever location? Probably Haji will tell you, oh, Mr. Yip, it was a very successful attack. We killed 3 soldiers, that is legal. Haji is also very smart. He understands very well the discussion of international law. But then my discussions have to ask him, Haji, what about those 50 civilians? They were injured or killed in the market during the suicide attack. Of course, Haji will try to explain, telling you they are collaborators. They are the ones supporting the American armies and they should be killed. But my role have to push. I want to push the same investigation from their side to try to tell them, it doesn't mean you have a gun, you can do whatever you want. There's always someone monitoring you. So normally, when it comes to the end of the discussion, Haji will slightly open his jacket and show me he has a gun in my office. And he will say, Mr. Yip, if you keep on pushing this kind of dialogue, the next one will be you to be gunned down. It is me, myself, to manage this kind of risk. It's just like you as a journalist working in the front line. If you are scared, you don't push, you don't ask questions, then you don't have a purpose to be there. But then if you push for too much over a certain limit, you put yourself at risk, then probably you will be the one losing your life. I don't recommend these kinds of things. I think we always have to be sensitive to the boundary of each interlocutors that we can actually play with. That I can explain later how we actually build these kinds of things. Am I going too fast? Is that okay? Abek, is everything okay at Medina? If no, I will just keep going, huh? Okay, I will skip this slide and come to the next one. Apart from those humanitarian dialogues that I just described to you, another things that we are specifically doing in the humanitarian front line that with the authorization from the international law, that is we are working in the prison for those people who are actually arrested because of all the security incidents. One of the typical examples that normally I will share with audience like you is, I'm sure you know the previous president in South Africa, Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela was released after 26 years of detention, Mandela was actually saying thank you to his people, to his family. And the third party that Mandela was saying thank you to was actually the ICRC. This is because we spent 26 years working in the prisons to make sure he was not assassinated for no reason. Because of the international law, the ICRC have the authority to just go into the prison of any country under conflict to request to see any party without limitation. I still remember I have done these kinds of things when I was actually in Palestine. I want to let you to think about the scenario that may be something good for your reflection as a journalist also. One day I was in a prison in Palestine. There was a special investigations by the authority in that period. So when I was in the prison, I was actually shocked myself. I saw most of the detainees was suspended, hanging like that from the ceiling. They were all tied up together like animals. Obviously, they were under a lot of ill treatment or brutality during the interrogation. So probably in this kind of situation, nothing you can really do. And then what I would do is I ask some of the detainees come into the room to discuss privately what had happened really to them. Probably most of them would not disclose anything to you because they would be scared after your departure, they were subject to more ill treatment. So my role is I have to find some creative way or innovative way to try to help them. Let's say you pick up a group of people, 50 of them. There's only one of them telling you that he or she suffered from ill treatment. Then if you take your liberty to go to approach the authority and make the complaint, probably after that evening, that particular person will be really having a party, badly beaten up by the authority. So normally I would try to ask more people, if after checking with all the people, there's only that particular person telling you he or she was illy treated, then I will explain to that person. Unfortunately, there's only you who have suffered the beaten up in the prison. Do you want me to use my authority to discuss with the government of that country why they are doing this to you? Probably that person will be very smart, telling you, no, Mr. Yip, don't do that. There's something wrong in this prison. Probably after 1 week and 2 weeks, I keep going back to the prison. A lot of people have been observing. Other detainees may be observing also, saying that, oh, actually that's okay. No problem to share news or secrets with this guy because the authority will not take any action. Then you can actually gather more testimony. More people would be telling you that they have suffered similar beaten up in the prison. And then by then you can actually protect the detainees. You go to the authority to tell them there's how many people in terms of percentage out of a bigger group of people that they have actually systematically suffering some ill treatment. And that's how we perform our work. So for other activities that I have been telling you about the distribution of medical materials, providing food and water, that's what we are doing. So you may be asking me, what is the importance of doing these kinds of things? In order to perform the protection activity I just described to you, we actually need this kind of assistant material. You can say it's actually a way to gain the trust from the people. This is jumping to the next slide. How we as a humanitarian and also you as a journalist, you have to manage your security risk working in the front line. Definitely a trust building or networking, or we call it a community engagement. I remember when I opened my office in Afghanistan, that was the area completely sealed up by the Taliban. We have been working in Afghanistan for more than 30 years, but the area that I work with, we have the office closed by the Taliban for 10 years. I was actually going back to reopen the office. So the purpose of trust building is to actually get the security guarantee from these kinds of armed groups to make sure they know us, why we are there. Normally, I will explain to them, we are there to provide assistance to the people, including those wounded military people like the Taliban, at the same time, the American army and the Afghan army. And of course, the Taliban will tell you, it's impossible. How can you help the American army? And how can you help the Afghan army? I won't let you staying here. Then I have to tell them, if you don't accept our assistance to the other side, and you cannot accept our assistance to you either, we are actually provide assistance to all sides without considering their political background, as I explained at the very beginning. So normally it takes time to build this kind of trust. They will put a lot of spy, a lot of people in the street or building to observe you, whether you really providing humanitarian assistance according to their need, according to the needs of the Taliban, according to the needs of those injured in the American army and the Afghan army. And they will check whether you are impartial. That means you are giving more assistance to one side and giving less assistance to the other side. There is a very, very sensitive relation you have to manage. I still remember when I was in Syria in 2011, that was the starting of the civil war in Syria. I did a similar process to visit all the military groups that they claim they have the territory to make them understand what ICRC stands for and what is our role and how we perform our duty. I met more than 40 different non-state armed groups in Syria, and I sent my first convoy. That means a lot of vehicles to the field. To my surprise, I still came back with my vehicle with more than 40 bullet holes in my vehicle. So that is actually telling it's very difficult to build a trust in Syria because there was no any central armed groups. There's actually more fragmented, many small groups operating over there. In this kinds of situations, it's actually very difficult to build trust, to have your principle understood by different groups. So now I come to the lesson learned in Hong Kong last year for a lot of first aiders and journalists. Hong Kong has always been peaceful for more than, let's say, 60 years, probably like Kazakhstan. People here have no experience about armed conflict or whatever. But from the picture here, you can see the intensity of the social protests and unrest last year in Hong Kong was actually pretty bad. And you have a lot of journalists from all over the world rushing into Hong Kong, together with some health worker locally organized to try to offer help in the street. And they would jump to the front line immediately by the assumption that the police and the protester understand their role very well, and they will respect them as a journalist or respect them as a health worker. But look at what happened here. There was a group of medical aid workers. You can see doctor written here. They were actually arrested with their hand clubbed in the street because basically it is not because you are working for a humanitarian purpose. It is not because you are just a journalist trying to tell the truth to the world. For new armed groups or military forces, they will just respect you by default. By making sure they understand your role, respecting their duty, it takes time to build. So probably you may say, sometimes it's very difficult to deal with the authority. The authority may not respect human rights or the right of journalists too much. But I want to tell you about this side. This is another journalist here. During the protests in Hong Kong last year, there was some very, very scary situation. Actually, the protester at the very beginning, they have all the moral correctness to protest. But at the same time, it became a riot also among themselves. So basically, you have some of the protesters doing something quite nasty by burning the houses of others, by burning the banks, by burning some other shops of the civilian people. So you have a journalist showing up here, trying to persuade them, your target should be the government instead of the civilian people. But you have some other protester didn't agree with the journalist, so he was seriously beaten up and quite badly sent to the ICU in a hospital. So that's what I try to explain to you. Your safety net of security in the war zone is not just because you arrive, you show your certificate and saying that you're a journalist, everyone will respect you. Today, we are living in a very fragmented world. People are absorbing different kinds of information. For example, 50 years ago, whenever there's a war, it's country fighting against country. But then you have ideology fighting against ideology. Today, you have groups fighting against groups or groups fighting against country. So basically, conflict is become much more complex. It's not like everyone will respect journalists all over the world should be respected. When you go to some other front lines like Afghanistan or Syria, you definitely have some groups, they don't respect this kind of practice. Although you believe it on yourself, but you cannot be too innocent and thinking everyone will do the same. So I definitely would encourage you, spend some time, build your network, build the trust with the local stakeholder before taking actions or performing your duty. I think that is my presentation. If you have any question, feel free to ask me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you very much for your experience, for your sharing with knowledge. And while our participants are just forming questions, will translate some key ideas.
Я переведу, да, кратко. Окей, ребята, выступал Джейсок Уип, да? Я сейчас вкратце расскажу про него. Так, Джейсок Уип, директор по взаимодействию с общественностью независимого аналитического центра по молодежной политике в Гонконге. И его презентация была о Международном комитете Красного Креста. Давайте я вкратце расскажу, что это за организация. Это нейтральная, беспристрастная и независимая гуманитарная организация. Она работает в ситуациях вооруженного конфликта. Имеет международный мандат на продвижение права вооруженных конфликтов. Она является частью международного движения Красного Креста и Красного Полумесяца. Не является неправительственной организацией и не входит в состав Организации Объединенных Наций. Какова же деятельность Международного комитета Красного Креста? Это защита в вооруженном конфликте, помощь жертвам вооруженного конфликта, превентативные действия и сотрудничество с национальными обществами. Дальше. Ну, мы сделаем больше акцент на защиту, да? Значит, что именно? Семейные связи, какие-то связанные с конфликтом, пропавшие без вести в связи, допустим, с 30-летней войной, арест и задержание в связи с конфликтом, защита гражданского населения — это следующие вопросы, которыми занимается Международный комитет Красного Креста. Значит, но основной целью, которую мы будем рассматривать, это защита гражданского населения. И главная цель этой организации — убедить стороны в конфликте, что лица, не принимающие активное участие в боевых действиях, охраняются международным гуманитарным правом. Они должны предпринять соответствующие шаги для признания и уважения таких людей и избежать жертв среди гражданского населения во время проведения и ведения боевых действий. Значит, воздушная бомбардировка — это считается ли законом? И чтобы быть законом, воздушные операции должны соответствовать принципам гуманитарного права. Военная необходимость, различия несоразмерность. Нападение или действия должны быть направлены на содействие военному поражению врага. Это должно быть нападение на военный объект и ущерб, причиненный гражданским лицам или гражданскому имуществу. То есть, если вы спросите, законна ли воздушная бомбардировка, вы сразу ответите незаконно, да? Но согласно некоторым принципам, если идет бомбардировка на военный объект, то она считается законным. Дальше следующее. Теракт. Что это законно, как... И если вы начнете размышлять на эту тему, то первая мысль, которая придет вам в голову, что нет. Но эти нападения на гражданских лиц, даже на поселенцев на оккупированных территориях, нарушают международное обычное право, Женевские конвенции и другие договоры. По сути, эти нарушения представляют собой военные преступления. Но что удивительно, не все атаки террористов-смертников являются незаконными. Атаки смертников против исключительно военных целей могут быть законными. И тот факт, что террорист решил покончить жизнь самоубийством в ходе атаки, не имеет никакого юридического значения. Международное право действительно обеспечивает средства защиты от нападений террористов-смертников на невоенные цели, поскольку Женевские конвенции позволяют и можно утверждать, даже требуют, чтобы все государства разыскивали и преследовали потенциальных террористов-смертников и тех, кто их поддерживает. Значит, на данной фотографии, эта фотография сделана в Колумбии, и это друг Джейсона Уип, Джейсона Абрахам. И он, значит, сейчас на фотографии с военными, с которыми ведет переговоры. Дальше следующее. Здесь также Джейсон отметил защиту лиц, лишенных свободы. Значит, условия содержания и правила обращения с задержанными должны быть соблюдены. Должно быть соблюдено достоинство и неприкосновенность задержанных. Задержанные не должны подвергаться жестокому обращению во время всего периода содержания под стражей. Процессуальные гарантии и судебные гарантии предоставляются соответствующими сводом законов. Дальше необходимость помощи. Следующий слайд. Это вот что обеспечивает? Это здоровье, экономическая безопасность, вода и среда обитания. Значит, для снижения риска безопасности необходимо построить доверительные отношения, это использовать сети и вовлеченность в сообщество. И последний слайд – это социальные волнения в Гонконге. Значит, в последнее время это извлеченные уроки для всех оказывающих первую помощь журналистов. Здесь Джейсон рассказывал о выступлении в Гонконге, о масштабных акциях протеста в Гонконге в прошлом году. И когда на помощь пришли врачи, значит, их арестовали, несмотря на то, что люди хотели просто помочь, и не посмотрели, что это врачи, не оказали, их тоже задержали. И также Джейсон рассказывал о ситуации, когда врач хотел тоже помочь в одной ситуации, когда митингующие начали поджигать уже дома друг друга, портить имущество. И в это время этот врач, значит, вмешался в этот конфликт, хотел помочь, но тоже за это был избит. Ну, наверное, вот это все, что... То есть Джейсон рассказал, что роль Международного комитета Красного Креста, то, что люди, которые работают в гуманитарных организациях, они должны осознавать то, что не всегда все люди понимают роль, то есть они не всегда могут осознавать роль данной профессии, роль профессии, его обязанностей в данной ситуации. Спасибо. Если есть вопросы, пожалуйста, задавайте.
So I can answer the question, right? I will try to make it shorter, so easier for you as an interpreter. So the first question that I would take is how often do journalists die in the hotspot? This is a very technical question from Timur. I would say anyone can die in the hotspot, but unfortunately, these days journalists are subject to very high risk. Normally, they are not. It's not because of the civilians, and basically it's because there are just too many non-country armed groups like the Islamic State, like Taliban, or some other groups they don't have name. Armed conflict in the front line is just getting too complicated. It's actually dangerous for everyone. So this is my answer for this question.
Вооруженные конфликты, они слишком сложные, и поэтому вероятность, высокий риск смертности, особенно среди врачей в вооруженных конфликтах, журналистов тоже.
So, okay, go on, sorry.
So, that's all. You can answer the next question.
Okay, the next question is from Madina. When I visit the hotspot, do I feel fear, and how safe for ladies? Firstly, I didn't visit those places. I actually lived there. When I was in Afghanistan, it was actually 3 years, and Syria, it was 2 years. So it's always like by counting by years. Whether I feel fear, I did suffer some traumatized experience. I came across, let's say, when I was in Afghanistan, I was almost attacked by the car bomb. The car bomb was just 10 meters away from my car. But very lucky, the explosion was not that big, but my vehicle was pushed away by the air current already. But in Afghanistan, when you survive from the explosion, the second round of danger is actually more dangerous. That is, when the police show up, they don't look at anything. They just shoot gun at the smoke. And that is the most dangerous period because they can actually fire bullets at your vehicle and killing you. And bullets cannot stop. I mean, the vehicle cannot stop bullets. Then whether women are particularly more dangerous. Honestly speaking, I don't know how to answer your question. I would say no, it's actually fair to everyone. But I did have 2 of my ladies' friends, colleagues, they lost their life when they are working in Afghanistan. One of them was actually a nurse in a hospital. She was taking care of a patient for months, and then the patient was discharged. But suddenly he came back one day. At the reception, he called my colleagues to come out. And my colleagues went out like visiting a friend. But then he took off a gun and killed her right there at the reception. I was shocked because that was in front of me. But at the end of the day, you think Lorena lost her life. Whether I'm angry towards that person, I cannot answer your question because living in a war zone is not that simple. Imagine, I'm sure that person with Lorena taking care of him for so many months so he recovered. He should be grateful for all the help from Lorena. But Afghanistan is a very complex situation. Let's assume someone tried to kidnap the family of that person and telling him, I know you have access to foreigner. If you don't help me to kill one foreigner, I will kill your family. I don't know whether it happened or not, but I try to imagine how difficult that person may have faced as a situation. So I don't know how to answer your question, but everyone have to take care of yourself in that kind of situation. Nothing guaranteed. Anything can happen. Yeah, I give it to you, translator.
Okay. когда вы были на поле боя, как вы чувствовали ли вы страх? И как там ситуация для женщин? Например, работа вот в Красном Кресте. Ну, вообще-то я не посещала эти места, я там буквально жил 3 года, 2 года в Сирии. И один раз, когда я ехал на своем транспорте, взорвалась бомба в 10 метрах от моей машины. И самое страшное было не то, а самое страшное было после, что после того, как приехала полиция, афганская полиция появилась на месте и начала стрелять в машину, везде был смог, но они просто стреляли, и пуля могла попасть в меня в любое время. Ну, касательно того, что как насчет женщин, я точно не могу ответить на этот вопрос, но 2 женщины, которые работали со мной, они потеряли жизни свои, и одна из них была медсестрой, и она ухаживала за пациентом 2 месяца, а в результате он один раз пришел на ресепшн и застрелил ее из оружия. Прямо перед моими глазами. Ее звали Лорена. И злюсь ли я на эту женщину, на этого мужчину? Я не могу ответить на этот вопрос. Но, может быть, его шантажировали. И вот мой ответ. Okay, please, next question. Thank you.
Okay, the next question I want to take is from Timur again. What is the rules I follow for survival in hotspot? The rule myself follow as a humanitarian may be different from you as a journalist. As a humanitarian, we try to avoid when there are too many people. When people gathering together, normally that is a fair hotspot for attack. We try to avoid it. But normally we arrive after the attack to try to save people's lives. But whenever you have a lot of people, try to stay away. And the second rules that I will follow, when I have no choice, I have to go to a building, a meeting, and whatever, that the first thing I would do, I try to look at where the emergency exists. I don't trust the security force in countries like Afghanistan because when things happen, they cannot stop anything. So what I would do is I would try to be familiar with the route of escape myself, evacuation. When accident or attack happen, I know where I can go and protect myself. And the last rule for you as a journalist, I have seen a lot of journalists running into trouble in countries like Afghanistan and Syria. My organization have saved them a couple of times from kidnapping or injury. So what I would do, what I would suggest is there are 2 periods that is very dangerous for journalists most of the time. Firstly is when you just arrive at the country because you don't know the rules, you don't have your source of information, you don't have your network, you may run into trouble very soon. So for this particular period, I would recommend you to build up your network, especially a local network, as much as possible. And another period that is very dangerous for journalists that normally I saw is when you are very familiar with the country where you station, you thought you know everything, you know all the information. Whenever you have this kind of mindset, you may be a little bit more relaxed. Then sometimes you will violate certain cultural rules or security rules yourself. So you have to really alert and remind yourself, it doesn't matter how long you are in those kinds of frontline country, but things can happen any second.
Окей. И каковы же правила, которым следует следовать, чтобы выжить в таких горячих точках, пока ты занимаешься своей работой? И Джейсон предлагает 3 правила. Первое – это избегать слишком много скопления людей, толпу. Второе – это если вы заходите в здание какое-то, всегда надо искать выход, знать, где находится эвакуационный выход, путь отступления, знать. И третье – это вот когда ты только приезжаешь в страну, плохо знаешь все правила этой страны, надо быть очень осторожным. Надо, чтобы с собой кто-то был, обязательно какой-то наставник. И второй период – это когда ты, наоборот, очень хорошо все знаешь, и у тебя возникает чувство уже расслабленности. Ты можешь потерять вот бдительность, и в это время может случиться плохое. То есть вещи могут произойти в одну секунду плохие. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the last question I would take is from Mitri, right? So is that legal to use physical forces of military at the peaceful meeting? Or I would say you're talking about street protest. For example, what's happening in Belarus and Russia. When I was in my presentation, when I say whether it was legal or not, that was from the perspective of international law. You have to understand international humanitarian law is only applied when there's an international conflict. That means a war between countries. Let's say country A fighting against country B. When there's a disturbance or social unrest happening within a country that is actually governed by the local national law. That means during the protest in Belarus, then you have to subject to the country of Belarusian. That is the situation. So I cannot comment whether the operation of the police in Belarus is correct or not. But we can only condemn or blame them from the moral perspective. You can say it is not a ideal or perfect operation, but you cannot say they're illegal because according to the law of that country, maybe something acceptable.
Окей. И легально ли использовать физические силы или военные на мирных митингах? Например, как это было в России прошлым летом или как в Беларуси сейчас. Джейсон говорит, что международное гуманитарное право, оно применяется только в международных конфликтах, когда война проходит между двумя странами. Но если конфликт происходит внутри одной страны, и это зависит только от законов данной страны внутри, от законодательства, и отражается в Конституции, законодательство. Мы только можем винить их за это или ненавидеть, но а так это зависит, конечно, от законов данной страны. Okay, next question. Thank you.
There's a very technical question from Tim. It's like, how many journalists working in Afghanistan? I cannot know. I cannot tell because I'm not from the media industry. And but you do have a lot of foreign correspondents in Afghanistan, so no worry. It's a country quite well covered. You can easily find them. I think Tim will also have another question. How do I find sources of information upon arrival at hotspot? I think this is a very valid question. It's very dangerous to just do the wild search in the website because today there's a lot of false information in internet. I do recommend you upon your arrival, try to look for a few international organizations with good reputation. They have quite a good research and information team. They can easily tell you where's the safe spot, where's the safe area. When you are in trouble, you can easily reach out to them.
Окей. Вопрос был от Тимура. Сколько журналистов работают в Афганистане и Сирии? Но на этот вопрос я не могу ответить, потому что я не работаю в этой сфере. Я точно не могу сказать, я не знаю. Но на вопрос, как вы находите источники информации по прибытию в горячую точку, я советую, значит, в первую очередь поискать международные организации с хорошей репутацией, которые могут подсказать вам нужную информацию. Окей?
And another question is, how do the Taliban, Islamic State, they look at, they view the humanitarian aid? It's a very interesting question. Different groups have different position. The Islamic State in Syria, they are completely against humanitarian aid. They didn't want to work with us. They didn't want to talk to us. I have to be honest, we still have 5 colleagues kidnapped by the Islamic State in Syria after 7 years, we still have no contact with them. It's very difficult. But at the same time, you have some other non-state armed groups. For example, it's also related to Islamic State. That is the Boko Haram in Nigeria. They are quite open to work with humanitarian aid because they believe in the things that, yes, they are fighting, but the civilian people under their control still need support from humanitarian assistance until there's a peace. So I would say different groups, just like your society, you have different civil society, different attitude. You just need to talk to them, assess their situation. When there's quite bad reputation, they don't respect journalists or humanitarian workers, stay away. Don't try to persuade them. No way to persuade them.
Окей. Вопрос, значит, как талибаны и исламистские группы и другие относятся к гуманитарной помощи? Значит, исламисты, они против, потому что они не хотят даже разговаривать с нами. И 5 наших коллег были похищены, и до сих пор нет вестей от них. Это очень тяжело. Но есть такая группа Бухарам, она открыта для значит, работы с нами, и это зависит все от разные гражданские лица, разные отношения. Но самое главное, не надо убеждать их в этом. То есть надо как бы, если хотят, то пожалуйста.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. I want to add a little bit to my answer to this question. Because Islamic State in Syria is a little bit different. They have quite some members coming from Europe or other developed countries. Actually, they are coming from France or Northern Africa. They know quite well that the international standard and humanitarian aid. So they know by accepting humanitarian aid, somehow they have to compromise to follow certain expectation from the international community. So it's quite surprising that Islamic State in Syria, they refused. They didn't want to talk to a humanitarian organization because they didn't want to compromise any of their authority or control over the area.
Окей. Исламистские группы в Сирии, они бывают разные. В основном есть такая группа, которые, члены этой группы, они выходцы из Европы, и они знакомы с международными стандартами, и они готовы идти на компромиссы, но есть, которые нет, не знакомы. Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
I think it should be my last question because it's getting really late in Hong Kong. I have to sleep.
Okay.
So the last question is what I'm doing now after the ICRC. I came back to Hong Kong after living in different countries for more than 15 years, 15. I came back last year because I knew that my home is in trouble, especially the young generation, because the government is not running in a good shape. The young people facing a lot of troubles. With my exposure and experience in different countries, I'm very lucky to be invited to come back by a gentleman. He sets up a youth foundation with me in Hong Kong. So now I'm working on the number of youth projects to trying to help to build a perspective of the young generation in Hong Kong. Although life may not be easy now, but I hope they still see possibility to develop and find their opportunities all over the world. That's what I'm doing.
Окей. Что вы делаете сейчас после работы в Красном Кресте? Ну, я наконец-то вернулся домой в прошлом году, и после 15 лет, которые я провел, живя в разных странах, и я вернулся домой и обнаружил, что там беда, особенно с молодым поколением, и один молодой человек пригласил меня в свою организацию, это организация молодежная, и я сейчас занимаюсь молодежными проектами, которые дают возможность развитию молодежи. Вот чем я сейчас занимаюсь. Окей, thank you, Jason. for your
Yep.
for your answers.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much. Jason, thank you very much for joining us today. I want to add that Jason and I were together as a part of Asian Global Leaders Network, and I really appreciate it that you just joining us and taking the time to share with your experience today. Thank you very much.